Hey Arcaders, it's Ubernerd527 here, and welcome to the Pokémon Rewind Podcast, the podcast where we're going over the Pokémon anime episode by episode. But to spice things up, we actually just choose a random story arc from anywhere in the Pokémon mythos, and we just go episode by episode in that storyline. So we are currently in the Orange Island story arc, so if you're new to us, you know where we are. We are on the 17th episode of the Orange Islands League storyline, so if you're following along with us, that's where we are right now. And today's episode, I am not gonna lie, was kind of difficult to go through. There's no meat in this story at all, and it's kind of difficult to go through. Apologies if anyone out there actually likes this episode. Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of this episode specifically because, again, this is one of those throwaway episodes. But we're going through all the episodes in this story arc, so unfortunately I have to do this episode. Again, if you like this episode, please let me know why, because I would love to have a counterpoint to this. I am co-host less this week, so unfortunately I don't have a counterpoint to this. So if you have a counterpoint, please make sure you message us and we'll tell you how to do that. You can message us on thearcadearchives.com. Again, it's thearcadearchives.com. You can reply to the post. You can also reply to us on Twitter at TailsFTGameGrid to me personally, or at Arcade A Network to our Twitter account there, or you could also message us on any of our pictures on Instagram too. That would be great as well. All right. So anyways, so this episode is the 98th episode of the Pokemon anime, and it premiered on April 8th, 2000. That's pretty much all the fun facts really I have. I have one more fun fact, and I think we'll actually go over that when we get to it. We don't have a lot of information this week, and I'm very sorry, but unfortunately, again, like I said, this is kind of a very difficult episode to get through, and it's been a very difficult week for myself, so I just wanted to apologize for that, and apologize if this episode is a lot shorter than all the other episodes that we've done so far, but unfortunately, it's just been a difficult week, and also this episode was very difficult to get through, and so I apologize for all that. So, without further ado, it is time to get into the episode, and this episode is called
A Way Off Day Off!
Alright, so we're back to our old habits. We're going back to the way the opening of the episodes usually go, and that is our heroes riding on Lapras. Now, as they're riding on Lapras, the announcer's kind of talking about how they're in high spirits, that everything's great, wonderful. But then you look at them, and they look like they've really had a tough time crossing the sea on Lapras's back, if you can believe that. So Ash, Misty, and Tracy are all kind of just sitting there, and they're all kind of just staring off into space. Ash, of course, is hungry, and Misty and Tracy are just wondering what they should do exactly. They're not really sure what they should do. And, of course, Ash's tummy rumbles. And, of course, Misty asks Ash how he can be so hungry when he hasn't really done anything all day but sit on Lapras. And Ash goes, well, that's easy. I've been thinking about eating all day, therefore I am hungry. And so, of course, Pikachu spots an island in the distance. And, of course, Ash and company get excited about that, and they decide to go towards the island and go ahead and kind of land there and give them something to kind of rest and maybe even see if there's any adventures on this island or whatever. So, as they're going to the island, we cut back and we see Jigglypuff. And, of course, Jiggly is up to no good, apparently, because she laughs. She kind of giggles a little bit, and then we go off onto our next scene. Now, Ash and company are on the island, of course, and Ash thanks Lapras for her time, or his time, or whatever. And we get a really pretty shot of the actual island and how the island looks, and Pikachu and Togepi have gone off to play, and everyone just kind of looks around at how beautiful the island is and how wonderful everything is. You notice that Misty has let Staryu and Goldeen out, and she tells them to kind of go and have fun and do whatever. And Ash tells Lapras, hey, you can go join him if you want. And then, of course, Ash gets hit by some kind of nut or some kind of peanut. I'm not sure. Walnut, maybe. I don't know. But anyways, Ash gets hit in the head, and he thinks at first it's a meteor. But Tracy looks it up and picks it up, and it's actually some kind of fruit, which is kind of weird. Now, they're not sure exactly what dropped it, and then they looked up and see a Farfetch'd. Now, I could have done Farfetch'd as our special Pokemon for this week, but he doesn't really premiere all that much. He just shows up and then leaves. And there are actual other episodes that talk about Farfetch'd a little bit better. So that's why Farfetch'd isn't the featured Pokemon this week, is because they just show up once, maybe twice during the episode, and then that's about it. So anyways, Ash and company see the flock of Farfetch'd, and they kind of fly away with 2 parts unknown, and we'll see where they go to later. Now, Pikachu and Togepi have found some fruit, and tell Ash that they know where to find some more. So Ash and company go ahead and follow Pikachu and Togepi, and they show them this kind of grove of wonderful plants and fruits that are all over the place. Now, Ash and Misty see a fruit that Pikachu and Togepi had gotten off the vine, or the branch, and they think it looks sweet, so they decide to take a bite of it. But it's not sweet at all. It's actually very, very sour. So I guess it's not ripe yet. That's what Tracy says, that they're not ripe. Now, Tracy, being from the Orange Islands, I'm sure he probably knows about a lot of these fruits and a lot about them, and which ones to eat, which ones to not eat, and which ones to... so he gives them ones that should be ripe. Misty's a little apprehensive about that, so she says to give it to Ash, because Ash will eat anything. So Ash is like, okay, I'll try it. And so Ash tries it, and of course loves it. It tastes wonderful. So I guess the ones that they picked weren't ripe yet. So now you find out that there is enough food on this island for them to feast, and this makes everyone really happy, and they decide to go pick it. And they kind of figure that that's why the Farfetch'd are here, is because they come and get food and they bring it off to wherever they live. And so all of them decide, hey, let's go take a vacation. Nothing's happening today. There's no Team Rocket yet. Let's just take a vacation. Let's just relax for the day. We've been working really hard lately. What? I don't know, but they've been working hard apparently. So Ash and company then go ahead and let out all their Pokemon. Of course, Squirtle and Bulbasaur come out, along with Snorlax and Charizard. And we also get a look at all of the other characters' Pokemon as well. Tracy pulls out his Venonat, his Marill, and his Scyther. And of course, the only Pokemon that Misty doesn't have right now is of course Psyduck, who is already out of his Pokeball. Much to Misty's dismay. He's already out and just standing around. So anyways, Scyther comes out, and he's all ready to go, and he's, chopping around and kind of just, I guess, stretching his claw things, which kind of scares the other Pokemon off a little bit, because he's swinging these big blades around. And anyways, Tracy decides to have Scyther kind of meet everybody else, and Scyther is just like, yeah, woo, or something like that, to that effect. And it still kind of scares the Pokemon off, because they're not sure if they want to actually talk to this Scyther. It looks scary, kind of sketchy looking. But Togepi jumps out of Misty's arms and runs up to Scyther and kind of pats Scyther on the foot. And he's just so happy to see Scyther, and so that kind of breaks the ice for all the other Pokemon, who then, of course, come up to Scyther and start being friendly and whatnot. And they kind of put it up to the fact that Togepi is too young to be afraid of anything, so he kind of broke the ice for everyone, and now they're going to be all friends because, they're in the same boat. Now, Ash decides to then Ash decides to introduce his Charizard to Tracy's Scyther. Now, Charizard, of course, still not listening to Ash, who's just kind of laying around doing his thing. At first is like, nah, I'm good. And, Ash is like, I'm so sick of your attitude. You're just sitting there and you're doing nothing and you never do what I say. And this really burns me up, which, of course, is a poor choice of words, since then, of course, Charizard does a flamethrower to Ash's face. Now, the flamethrower almost hits the other Pokemon, but Scyther then cuts the flame in half, missing everybody, kind of saving the Pokemon. And then, of course, Charizard kind of looks at Scyther like, oh, look at this strong guy. I could fight him. And Scyther looks at Charizard and like, yeah, let's fight. And then, of course, Ash gets in the middle and says, no, this is our day off, no fighting. So the both two reluctantly kind of go their separate ways and they don't fight. But they're not sure exactly how this is all going to work out with Ash's Charizard and Tracy's Scyther. Meanwhile, while this is going on, of course, who is also on this deserted island but Team Rocket? But unlike their usual little gag, they're not actually looking for Ash and Pikachu this time around. They're actually lounging on the beach and catching some rays, except for Meowth, who can't get a tan because he has fur. So they're just kind of sitting there. Their Pokemon are all out too, and they're just kind of relaxing and resting. And they kind of say that this has been a long time coming, that we even need to rest. We needed a little bit of a vacation, and Meowth is like, yeah, because failure is hard work. And Jesse's like, don't mention work today. We're on vacation. Let's just enjoy this. We're not going to even steal Pokemon today. We're just going to relax and rest and not worry about anything. And that, of course, is when Meryl and Togepi come swimming by, which means they know that Ash and company is on the island now. And, of course, this sets everything in motion. Now, we get a shot of all the water Pokemon kind of playing in the water. Meryl playing with Togepi. We get Lapras kind of eating some seaweed. We get Staryu and Goldeen doing whatever it is that Staryu and Goldeen would do. And then, of course, we see Bulbasaur and the rest of the group kind of just getting all the fruit so that way they can have a big dinner tonight. And, of course, Snorlax and Charizard are all laying on the beach and kind of relaxing. Now, as they're doing that, of course, Team Rocket is now off the beach, and they are looking at Ash and company and all their Pokemon and getting excited because they're going to steal these Pokemon, and there's nothing going to stop them. James is kind of reluctant because he's like, hey, guys, this was supposed to be our day off. Come on, man. We're supposed to be relaxing today. And Jesse goes, well, we can relax when our boss forgets all our debts because we screwed up so many times. And then James is like, oh, yeah, you're right. That's important. And so, Meowth is like, yeah, and we can, once we give all these Pokemon to the boss, he'll be happy with us, and then we can go on a real vacation. And so they all decide that this is what they're going to do, is they decide to get to these Pokemon so that way they can go on a real vacation. So Ash and company is now bringing out a basket and with some more fruit, and they see that Scyther's kind of yelling at Snorlax, who kind of looks a little bit confused at what's going on right now. It looks like Scyther is kind of protecting the food a little bit from Snorlax. As we know, Snorlax eats a lot of food, and Scyther, of course, does not want Snorlax to eat all of this food before they're supposed to. So Snorlax is a little bit hungry, and Ash kind of reassures him, don't worry, we're going to get all this ready. It's going to be cooked and ready, and you'll be loving it, and we'll eat as soon as we can. And that's when, of course, out of the pile of fruit comes Jigglypuff. And, of course, because she's Jigglypuff, she starts singing and puts everyone to sleep. And, of course, gets angry because, of course, everyone fell asleep during her song, and then, of course, scribbles on everyone's faces. Some of the scribbles are actually kind of funny, I'm not going to lie, especially Snorlax's, where she adds a little nose to his face. It's actually quite funny. But again, this is a joke that has, in my opinion, run its course. It's really, really not that funny anymore, and, So all the gang wakes up with now their face all markered up. And I think Misty was the first to actually wake up. Because she's already wiping off all the marker off her face. And then, of course, you see everybody and their funny looks and all that. So, but Snorlax is still asleep, even though everyone's already waking up. Snorlax is still asleep, and so they all decide, let's let sleeping Snorlaxes lie. So they decide to leave Snorlax asleep, and then, of course, while they're preparing the food. So, we get to dinner now, and they're about to eat some dinner. All the Pokemon have their own fruits, and Charizard is kind of just, whatever, and Snorlax is still asleep. And then, of course, Tracy comes up with a kind of a fruit sandwich. So there's no meat, there's no cheese, it's just sandwich with a bunch of fruit in it. And Misty's like, how about this? Don't you have any like peanut butter or usual sandwich stuff? And he's like, no, this is all we got. So let's just dig in. These are really good anyways. You'll love them. And so everyone's like, okay. And Misty's like, yeah, all right. So they decide to go eat it. And just as they're doing that, of course, Snorlax kind of sneaks up on behind Misty, and right above Misty's head kind of grabs the plate with the sandwiches the sandwiches that are on the plate, and he gobbles them all up in one bite. All gone. All the sandwiches are gone. Their dinner's ruined. And Snorlax just doesn't really care. He's just Snorlax. He eats what he wants and then goes to sleep. That's just the way he is. And that's pretty much the end of Act 1. So Act 2 starts off with, of course, Snorlax, who is now asleep, and Ash and company, who are now washing dishes in the river. And these dishes are all thanks to Snorlax, as we can probably already tell. So Ash kind of complains about the fact that Snorlax is sitting there lying down doing nothing while everyone else is kind of working on everything. And Tracy's like, yeah, it's just the way Snorlax is. He eats when he wants to and he sleeps when he wants to. And then Misty's like, hey, you guys notice that Snorlax didn't eat as much as he did when we first met him? And everyone's like, yeah, I guess so. And that's when Ash is like, well, it's, Tracy's like, well, this is because he doesn't use as much energy as he does when he's in his Pokeball. And then Ash is like, no, this is because I caught him, because I'm a great trainer, and because Snorlax is, now with a great trainer, therefore he doesn't eat that much. And Misty, of course, then says, well, oh yeah, really? So why haven't you trained Snorlax yet? And Ash is like, well, and then before he can answer, Meryl and Togepi come walking by, and we see that Togepi is playing with Meryl's tail, which is kind of funny. It's kind of cute in a way, and they all comment on the fact that the two are getting along together. But then Ash comments, well, I'm glad that they got along, but the other two haven't really hit it off very much, though. And it shows Scyther, and he's kind of like standing in the middle of a pond, and he's kind of wiping away and, I guess getting himself psyched and pumped and just keeping himself, focused or whatever. And off to the side, we see Charizard, who is laying outside of this pond, and he's just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. You act tough, man. I'd beat you any moment of the day. And so they kind of just go back and forth, and finally, they don't actually fight, but, they just kind of bug it back and forth. And then, of course, we have to have some type of pun. So Ash says, I wish Scyther would cut it out, and Charizard would keep its cool. Ha, 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 ha. So anyways, we're moving on to the nighttime. Now, it's at night, late at night. Ash and Tracy have already gone to sleep. Snorlax is, well, he's still in a coma. And we see Pikachu, who notices that Ash has disappeared. So Pikachu goes and tries to find where Ash has gone. And Pikachu finds Ash kind of on the edge of the forest, near the beach, and he's kind of looking at the GS ball, because we have to be reminded that the GS ball is a thing. It's a thing that exists in this storyline, even though it doesn't pay off at all. I'm sorry to spoil that for you, but it doesn't pay off, so don't even invest yourself in it. But anyways, Ash is kind of looking at the GS ball and going, what's inside? I don't understand. Something has to be inside of it. I wonder what's inside. There has to be something different. And then as he's kind of wondering all this, Pikachu then finds him, and Ash kind of says, hey, come on up here, sit up here with me, Pikachu. And Pikachu kind of just sits right down, and they kind of look up at the stars, and Ash is like, well, man, you could really see the stars out here much better than you can at home, huh? And Pikachu just says, Pika! I guess, which means okay. And Ash comments that the Orange Islands are sure different, and that also includes the gyms as well, because he pulls out his badges, the 2 badges that he's won so far, and see, these gyms are kind of different than what we're used to. And then we get a montage. That's right, we get a montage for absolutely no reason. There's absolutely no reason for this montage, but we still get it. So we see Sissy, and we see Danny, and we see the battles and getting his 2 badges. We also get a dub. In the English dub version, you get a really very kind of cheesy song that was available for one of the soundtracks that they had put in this song. So, I mean, whatever. It's just a little montage that's, hey, we're going to, just put this in here for no reason. And then Ash is like, you know what, we're going to do our best, and we're going to get all 4 of these things, and we're gonna do our best in this one. And Pikachu's like, yeah, let's do it, man, let's go. But he doesn't actually say that, because all he can say is Pika Pika. And then, of course, we look up at the star, and we see a shooting star in the sky, which is probably Jirachi, or maybe Rayquaza up there in the atmosphere, probably. Who knows? So, as Misty and Tracy are sleeping, Tracy kind of wakes up in a daze, and he's talking about Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, and he's talking about how he's excited to sketch them. Now, I'm actually kind of wondering if this was kind of a teaser for the movie, because the movie kind of takes place in the Orange Islands. Tracy's in the movie. I wonder if this was kind of a kind of a nod to the movie, kind of like what Mewtwo showing up in the original series in the Indigo League. Mewtwo showed up several times in the episode to kind of as a sneak peek of the movie to come. So I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact, or it's just because they're legendary birds and all people know who the legendary birds are. And by the way, they are coming out with special ability versions of all 3 of them. So next month, so we'll be able to get all 3 of them next month, which will be kind of interesting for them to have those special abilities. Well, anyways, went on tangent. Sorry about that. So Misty wakes up and hears Tracy making all this stuff, and then you see like some glitters in the sky, and Tracy falls back to sleep, and Misty's like, oh, he's just dreaming, and she falls back to sleep. Now everyone's already asleep, but you see the shines come in, and if you're a Pokemon trainer, you know what this is. This is sleep powder. But the only 2 Pokemon that don't get hit by the sleep powder are Charizard and Scyther. So who's using this sleep powder? Of course, that would be James's Victory Bell. That's right, James Victory Bell knows sleep powder, which is actually not a surprise if you've trained any type of grass Pokemon in the first gen. That was kind of a staple for most of the grass type Pokemon, as they either had sleep powder, poison powder, or stun spore. One of those 3. And it was kind of a staple, so it wasn't too much of a surprise that James Victory Bell knew sleep powder. But this is kind of the first time that James's Victory Bell has actually used it. Now, this is what I was going to talk about. I talked a little bit about earlier in the podcast. For some reason, James's nose grows about 6 inches long, and it's inexplicably mentioned. It's at first when I saw this episode, I thought it was a goof by the animators, but apparently it's actually not. When he talks about himself being and his victory bell being a knockout combination, his nose grows, and this is a likely reference to a Japanese sign for arrogance, which is and I'm really sorry if I butcher this name, the Yamabushi Tengu. So, it's kind of a Japanese reference, and a lot of times these Japanese references go right above kids' heads. I probably never would have noticed it being a kid. But yeah, it does grow for just 2 seconds, and of course then Victory Bell grabs James by the head and starts chomping on his head. And then of course Meowth and Jessie are like, let's leave these two alone. Let's just kind of just go do our thing. So Jessie says that things are about to get sticky and pulls out a bazooka. Now, out of the bazooka comes these little, like, rubber, remember those toys back in the, like, late 90s, late 80s, early 90s, those Garfield things that people put on their cars? Kind of reminded me of that. So each of these little rubber suctions attached to each of the Pokemon that were kind of laying there next to Misty and Tracy and Ash, and stuck right to them. And so their plan was that they were going to reel all these Pokemon in. Now, Psyduck and Togepi and Bulbasaur and Squirtle come easily, but of course they can't pull Snorlax because he's so dang heavy. So as they're trying to do this, of course the rope is cut by Scyther, and Scyther and Charizard kind of emerge, and Charizard all of a sudden starts roaring as loud as he can and kind of starts alerting everybody to the fact that something's going on. This wakes up everybody and also brings Ash running, and he's like, well, what's going on? What's the deal here? And so as Charizard and Scyther are just sitting there just roaring as loud as they can, waking everybody up, and it just kind of brings everyone to their attention and the fact, and especially the Pokemon that have been nabbed by the little rubber things, that somebody's been trying to capture them. And of course, Misty and Tracy are like, I don't know what's going on here. And Ash is like, okay. Then all of a sudden, a giant rope comes with a hook attached to it, and Jessie and James start doing their motto as they are going down this large rope slide. But because, of course, being Jessie and James, they then hit the tree that's at the end of the rope, and kind of cut the motto in half. Now, Meowth kind of slides after them and says, hey, if you're going to do this motto, do it right, and kind of slashes their face. And then, of course, they could just get back up, and they kind of poison. And they're like, you know what? We were going to take them while you were asleep, but since you're awake, we're still going to take them anyways. And of course, Misty says, don't worry about it. We can beat you in your sleep, which actually I don't discount that statement. I don't discount the fact that Misty and Ash could probably beat all of them in their sleep. So Jessie and James pull out Arbok and Weezing, and they attack. Pikachu goes after them, but Weezing does a smokescreen. Then Scyther spins around in what we can assume is his Swords Dance, which then pushes all the toxic smoke away, and also flings Weezing towards Arbok. Now, I don't know why, but this takes out a lot of Scyther's energy, which is weird because he hasn't really done anything. I guess because he's an old Scyther, I guess that's probably why, maybe? I don't know. Anyways, so Ash then asks all his Pokemon to attack. So Bulbasaur uses his Vine Whip, which technically wouldn't do much to them because they're poison types. And then Squirtle uses his Water Gun, which actually would do a whole lot of damage. And then knocks Weezing and Arbok to Jessie, James, Meowth. And then Pikachu, of course, with his Thunder Shock, which shocks them all. But they don't blast off just yet. And then Ash calls out for like a team tackle. But Scyther and Charizard kind of step in and are like, no, we'll do this. So Charizard does a flamethrower and heats things up for everybody. And then Scyther, we learn now, also knows Skull Bash. Skull Bash is a pretty powerful attack. The only bad thing about Skull Bash in the first generation is that it takes 2 turns. The first turn, you have to kind of wait for it to power up. So the first turn you don't, it doesn't do anything, and then the second turn that's when it hits. In newer iterations of the game, you actually raise your defense a little bit, so it actually makes it a little bit more of a viable attack than just kind of a reversed version of Hyper Beam. So anyways, Scyther does Skull Bash and knocks Team Rocket out. And of course, they go blasting off again, and we don't see them again for the rest of the episode. Or do we? But we'll talk more about that a little bit later. So Tracy and Misty say goodbye, and Ash tells everyone they did a great job. And then, of course, we look over at Charizard and Scyther, and they're still kind of staring each other down, like, and Ash tries to calm them down before they start fighting. And before they do anything, they just kind of stop, turn around, and go opposite directions. Misty's like, they're just flexing their muscles. They're not gonna fight each other. They're just kind of rivals, and they just want to see how tough they are, look at each other. And Tracy's like, yeah, I think they respect each other now. I think we don't have to worry about these two anymore. And Ash is like, I hate to referee that match between them. Although I will have to say, as a Pokemon nerd, that basically means that Charizard has the advantage since Scyther is a bug type. And Charizard would probably win since, Scyther is a bug type and Charizard is a fire type. But, it might be a good match to watch one of these days. So anyways, our heroes then leave the island and on Lapras, on to their next adventure. And the announcer says something about to the effect of they have now filled with hope and energy and rest and relaxation. But that's not the end of the episode. Oh no. Team Rocket has blasted off onto a little island, and they're kind of just, it's kind of sad about the fact that they lost, and they're stuck in the middle of nowhere. And then Meowth gets the idea, James gets the idea that they should just take a vacation. They're on the middle of nowhere, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. They should just rest. And so they're all laughing and excited, and then all of a sudden, a Farfetch'd comes out of nowhere. Now, they're all excited because, Farfetch'd, we can give this to the boss and then he'll be happy. And Meowth goes, well, maybe there's more than one of them on this little island. And then, of course, we find out that this is where the Farfetch'd nest is. And, of course, now they're going to get a beating of a lifetime, which doesn't seem that far-fetched. Sorry, I didn't mean to use that joke. I totally did, actually, but I'm sorry for using it if you're listening to this. Anyways, that's pretty much the end of the episode. We're done. And we go on to the next adventure. So, let me go ahead and go over my pros and cons for this episode. So, for my pro, I think that... I'm sorry, I really don't have a pro for this episode at all. I mean, there's some funny moments. There's some really interesting animation. There's some really beautiful landscapes and artwork done for this episode. But to tell you the truth, I really did not like this episode. And like I said earlier in the podcast, I just had a hard time even recording this podcast because this episode, to tell you the truth, is a true throwaway episode. This has nothing to do with the Orange Islands. It has nothing to do with Ash's story. It has nothing to do with anything. It just feels to me that this episode was an episode that our writers got to, and they're like, well, we don't know what to do, and let's just take a vacation. Let's just get something done really quickly. And so what they did was they just quickly put something together and just kind of threw it out there. And it's like, we want a vacation. I guess maybe it's their feeling is they just want a vacation and they wanted to relax. So they did an episode as quickly as possible. They put it out and they just kind of left it there, and that was it. Now, I'm not totally complaining because, sometimes that happens even with podcasters. You just get to a point where you need to take a break. You need to take a break from the usual. And, so I don't I don't hate this episode, but it was just very difficult to get through because it was, again, that same formula that they always have, just no special Pokemon. And I think the only reason that they threw in Farfetch was so that they could have something different than the Pokemon we've seen a million times already. Even though they had Scyther, who was kind of a new Pokemon, because he just got caught last episode. They really just threw Farfetch'd in because they just needed some other Pokemon besides the one that we've already seen. So I just feel that this episode kind of was just thrown together. I don't feel that there was much thought put into this episode. I think it was just put together as quickly as possible and brought out as quickly as possible, and that was it. And again, I could be wrong on this. I could totally be wrong on this, on that, but it just didn't feel like their heart was into this. It felt like they were just kind of putting an episode out just so they could continue this arc. And I really think this Orange Island's arc probably could have been a lot shorter had they not done so many throwaway episodes. If they just stuck to the storyline and getting Ash from point A to point B instead of, point A and then point 1, 2, 3 and then B and then 1, 2, 3 and then, just kind of jumping all over the place. And I think the reason for that, they were trying to stall for time. They were trying to make sure that this lasted a little bit longer so that way when the next game came out, they could, then play it and then get a plan for what they were going to do next. This tends to be a running thing with anime. A lot of animes do this, especially animes like Naruto and Bleach, where the manga version, the Japanese comic, for those of you not exactly sure what that means, the manga version is actually still going a lot of times. A lot of times they base anime off of Japanese manga, and sometimes they do it while the manga is still coming out. So a lot of times when the TV show catches up with the manga, the TV show has to come up with something original because they have to wait for the creator to continue on with the manga before they can continue on with the storyline that they were, supposed to be going with. Now, some shows did this well, and some shows did this not so well. And I feel that the Orange Islands is kind of in the vein of that, where they didn't have another game. They pretty much went through all of Red, Blue, and Yellow. They tried to stretch it out as much as they could, but they just couldn't. And now they had at least another year or two before the next games came out, and they needed to make sure that they had something. So what do? They come up with something. And I think some of these episodes are really good. Some of them are very big in the history of Pokemon. Ash catching Lapras. Later on, we're going to see a really big episode with Charizard that I know that Danny is just absolutely waiting to talk about. But I just think that some of these episodes were just kind of thrown together because they needed to make this arc a little bit longer than it is. And I think this is definitely one of those episodes. So I'm sorry to leave it at a downer. But I do enjoy the Orange Islands. It's not that I hate it. There are just some episodes like this one that it's so hard to get through because I really just don't think that much thought was put into this episode. So what do you think? What do you think that this episode was a good episode, or do you think this episode was also kind of a thrown together episode? We want to know. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna tell you how to do that right now. Now, the Pokémon Rewind Podcast is part of the Arcade Archives Network. You can go to our website, thearcadearchives.com. Again, that's thearcadearchives.com. We have wonderful articles, podcasts, videos, and all kinds of things that, and also webcomics that people will enjoy. And I especially if you're a nerd and you love nerd culture, this is the place to be. So please go to thearcadearchives.com and check us out. There you can also comment on our podcast, our past podcasts. You can also look at all the other ones. I know iTunes only has the last 10 episodes, so you won't be able to go all the way back to episode 1. So if you go onto the site and you go to Pokemon Rewind, you can actually see all the episodes from the beginning, and you can actually catch up from the beginning. So please feel free to do that. Now, also, we are on Twitter at TailsFTGameGrid if you want to talk to me directly, or at Arcade A Network if you just want to talk to all of us as a whole, because we all share that Twitter account. So please let us know on there as well. Also, if you're listening to this on YouTube, please make sure to reply as well. I look at these replies every day, and I would more than happy to reply back to you and see what you think about this episode. So please reply and let us know. And I will definitely, when I get a reply, I definitely will talk about it on the podcast. So please, 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 please reply. Also, we are on Instagram at The Arcade Archives Network. The Arcade Archives Network on Instagram as well. So follow us on there. We try to put a post up at least once or twice a week. And also, when something new comes up on the site, we always try to make sure that we are promoting that as well. So any new articles, anything new that comes on the site, please feel free to follow us there. We are also on Facebook at facebook.com/arcade1981. Again, that's facebook.com/arcade1981. That's where you can find us on Facebook. So, again, if you're listening to this on iTunes, please make sure you subscribe to us. And also, please leave a review if you like this episode, if you liked the fact that we went for this. And actually, it's a lot longer than I thought this episode would be. Please feel free to leave some comments, because comments make this podcast easier to find for others out there. So please help us out in that way as well. Don't forget, also on the arcadearchives.com, I also have a webcomic, Tales from the Game Grade, comes out every month, and it encompasses all of video games. It's a video game city where all video game characters come and relax and rest. But I don't really stick to that. I kind of do my own thing. So feel free to check that out. The next one will be out probably in the next couple of weeks. So feel free to check those out, catch up on it. You don't really even have to catch up on it. You can just read the new one, because they're technically different every month. It's just whatever I feel like doing at the time, I guess. So thank you so much for joining us here once again, and thank you for listening to Pokemon Rewind. Our next episode of the Pokemon Rewind podcast is going to be it's going to be a much better episode. And this is very Shakespearean, if you will. It's called Wherefore Art Thou Pokemon. Now, Ash, Misty, and Tracy land on an island, and they meet a boy and girl who own a Nidoran. Nidoran girl and a Nidoran boy. Well, these Nidoran are very, very friendly with each other, but their owners aren't so friendly. So, when they find this out, Misty is bent on getting these two Nidorans together. Will her plan succeed? Will they get these two Nidorans together? Will these star-crossed lovers ever find true happiness? I don't know. If you've already watched the episode, you probably already know as well as I do. So feel free to tune into that. Feel free to tune into that next week. And thank you again so much for listening. So, from all of us here at Pokemon Rewind and the Arcade Archives Network, thank you so much for joining us here. And now we leave you with a clip from Wherefore Art Thou Pokemon. Best wishes, everyone.
What you doing?
Writing identical letters to Emily and Ralph? It's the perfect way to get those two together.
Do you think it'll work?
Of course it'll work! Ralph and Emily are both gonna get a letter. A love letter from each other.
But couldn't you get arrested for mail fraud?
Those two are gonna wind up thanking me for this. They're not mature enough to admit it, but they really like each other.
You know what? It's exactly the same thing with you and Ash.
You must be crazy!
Thank you for joining us for this Arcade Archives Network video. If you like this, please make sure to subscribe to this channel and leave comments below. If you would like more, please go to thearcadearchives.com or zowiekerpowie.com. Thank you so much once again for joining us for this Arcade Archives Network video, and don't forget to keep playing like it's 1981.
Message from headquarters. This is a Rebellion production and is part of the Arcade Archives Network. That is all.